Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Series 7 of Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours is trying to interview 200 loiners, that's people from Leeds, over the first half of the most important decade in the history of the human species and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission for this podcast is to try to capture just some of what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, is doing during humanity's biggest emergencies. On Working Hours, you hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and tell me about what they do all day and let me record how this decade affects our work. Thank you for listening to this episode.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I think I was about the age of 7 or 8 when I was at primary school, and I for the first time came top in a science quiz. And I remember rushing home to my mum and saying, "Mum, I want to be a biochemist." So I ultimately got to be a biochemist.
Oh, cool.
I qualified as a biochemist from university. So I achieved that and then thought, what do I want to do now? So I didn't go to biochemistry.
What does a biochemist do? Now that I am one.
Yeah, I think ultimately biochemists are probably the unsung heroes of science, certainly in the 80s and 90s and probably now, because they're the ones who really understand and study all about the chemical reactions that go in the body and the amounts of detail they have to go into. Of course, great respect for lots of audience science programs is really in depth. They need to know what's going on inside basically every chemical reaction.
Yeah.
Don't ask me now because I don't remember. But we had all sorts of things to study about how the cells makes energy and in a way how we stay young, and now there's a lot of science coming out now about how we can stay young as we age, and in fact even reverse our aging. I think a lot of that goes down to the biochemists as well. Not me, but the biochemists. But so for me, it was really a fascination of wanting to understand how we work at a deeper level, but also because I came top in science class when everybody thought I was a bit not too smart. So I was quite chuffed about that. So that's why I said I want to be a biochemist to my mum.
Yeah.
I remember coming home into the kitchen, and that was it. So I did it.
You're listening to Series 7, Episode 4, and to my guest, Saleem Shafi. This is another in-person recording, recorded at, you guessed it, the Santander Work Cafe. I should be getting paid for plugging this place. Recorded on the 7th of April, 2026. Hello, colleague. Saleem Shafi is a financial well-being and workplace performance advisor and the founder of Wellbeing. He is enthusiastic about improving people's lives so that they can live in dignity, feel valued, and contribute to society. Saleem holds a master's in psychology and has over 20 years' experience in financial services, including as a financial advisor, bank manager, and head of business unit for a legal services provider. Financial well-being is an essential part of people's lives, yet the data points to a nation which has low levels of financial well-being, literacy, and capability, resulting in high levels of personal distress and, by extension, a negative impact on their employers' operational and business outcomes. Having developed quite possibly the UK's largest face-to-face financial wellbeing and capability service as Deputy CEO of Money Buddies, a service which received acclaim from Martin Lewis and received national awards, including from the Centre for Social Justice and Institute of Money Advisors, Saleem would receive requests from employers seeking advice and guidance on how best to support the financial well-being of their people. To that end, Saleem now works closely with employers and their teams to improve their people's financial well-being, contributing to beneficial outcomes for both employee and the employer. Saleem's specialist services include research and data on the financial well-being of your employees, consultation, for example, developing an organizational financial well-being strategy and program, and also training, delivering certified financial well-being first aider courses, which means key staff are upskilled to support their people at the point of need. Saleem Shafi has made numerous appearances as a financial specialist on national media, including all mainstream channels, and now on this decidedly non-mainstream media as well. Right, let's do this finally. Episode 195 of Working Hours with Saleem Shafi.
So, what is it that you do now?
Okay, so what I do currently is I help organisations reduce the risks to the organisations and their people by supporting their financial well-being. Mm-hmm. Financial stress is a big issue at the moment. It has been for a number of years. And to be fair, a lot longer than that's being put out there in the media and press. It's become mainstream in the last 3 to 4 years because of COVID and the compound effects of the cost of living crisis, which really followed when we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And those two things together brought the fact that many people who thought they were doing okay on middle, even to high incomes, all of a sudden finding that their lifestyle in one way or the other is either being reduced massively, significantly to the point where they can't afford to pay the bills on time, or just seeing a downgrading in their standard of living. But nobody wants to see a downgrading in the standard of living. Mm-hmm. And now you have people who are earning £100,000 a year seeing the effects of the cost of living crisis and how they're having to now change the way they think about their life and the way they live day to day, the number of holidays they have, or maybe not go as many treats or meals. And that can be a big change for somebody who's on a low income, has now been pushed down even to a situation where they don't have enough money to pay for the basics. Mm-hmm. The psychological impact on people is great. So we're in a real crisis at the moment. So what we're finding is that employers are recognizing that their people are starting to struggle, and that's impacting on their business. And because that's impacting on their business, they think, well, what can we do about that? How can we support our people? So I now work with our employers to support the financial well-being of their people. And it isn't always about pay on its own. Of course, that makes a big difference. There's a lot more behind the scenes. And so the work that I do, and work with a number of organisations now, is helping organisations, particularly people who are struggling, mm-hmm. helping organisations identify that early on, mm-hmm. so they can offer them the right support mechanisms that helps people feel confident about taking action and getting the support they need sooner rather than later. And the reason why I say that is because in my previous role, where I had the privilege of being deputy CEO of a charity based in Leeds, and that role was we're working with an organisation that helped people who are struggling with debt, mm-hmm. and also other money issues. It really helped people take action sooner rather than later. Yeah. Because if you can take action sooner rather than later, it prevents a whole raft of other issues from getting worse or coming up. So, for example, it can stop people getting deeper into debt. It can help people get the breathing space they need if they're in debt, so that they can recover and start to feel better about their lives. Help people get a sense of pride back in their lives. Because what we find, and what I found as well with the work that we did through a magnificent team, it was great teamwork, is that people feel isolated. They feel it's their fault if they get into debt or into money problems. They feel they should have known better. They punish themselves, and that can start to bring on depression, mental ill health, and that can lead to even worse situations, even suicide. And we've had people coming into our centres in Leeds talking about the fact that they felt suicidal, even self-harming in front of advisors as well. And they're blaming themselves for it most of the time. And they feel helpless. How can they get out of it? There is a lot of support out there, and helping people feel safe about taking that support. Because people actually, the people we support, they actually knew that help was there, but they were nervous about taking the first steps to getting that help because they felt embarrassed. Yeah. And one thing my colleagues did, teams, is look, it's not your fault. Most of the times, very rarely does somebody get into debt or have financial issues because they've done something willfully. This myth out there of people being bad budgeters who just want to spend a load of money and blow money on their credit card and go on big luxury holidays and all of a sudden just don't worry about it. That's a very, very small minority of people. It's a very, very small number of people. I would say less than 1 in 100, I would say, if you could do that. If you look at the tens of thousands of people that were helped, it's really about a change in circumstances, usually out of their control, or indirect situations happened that they hadn't thought about. And so that puts people into real difficulty. So want to create a world where certainly the reason why I work with employers is because it's importantly, it helps the individuals and it also helps the employer's business, because what employers are doing is they're losing, its profits because people are absent.
Productivity. People's minds are elsewhere.
So here's a number. On average, if you want to affect somebody's performance and you start talking at work about, somebody starts talking about, I've got a gas bill to pay, I can't pay it next month, or I think I'm going to get behind on my credit card, or I've got the electricity bill's going to come through the next few days. Immediately, on average, people's IQ level drops by 13 points. So there's a number of things here. If you're in an office and you're writing a report for the CEO or for your manager, you might make a mistake. If you are driving a forklift truck, you just might forget what you're doing for a moment, get distracted, and you could have an accident. So the ramifications if I was working in a lab as a biochemist, you mix the wrong chemicals up, you could have a bit of an explosion, so to speak. So the ramifications are all over the place. And then we've got people who are off work because they're taking time to look after themselves while they're dealing with finances. So we've got all sorts of issues. Just on absenteeism and on presenteeism, where you lose concentration while at work, you're not thinking about your work, you're thinking about your issues. Just on those two metrics, it's costing businesses on average, and this is a couple of years ago now, it's costing business on average £380 per person by not supporting their financial well-being. So what if we had people in place at work who were trained to support people, perhaps the colleagues they work with, to support them, particularly at their time of crisis? That might change the picture somewhat, and it does. It does. So that's the work that I do, really, is that we can get people who are there sooner rather than later, and that reduces absenteeism, reduces presenteeism, reduces or helps prevent what we call cognitive decline. People just can't focus on their work because or their quality of their focus goes down because of the issues of money, particularly. So there's a figure, £380 per person at least. If we put inflation into it now, it's more like £425 per person per year. So that's helping businesses overcome that. And I'd like to think that's good for society, it's good for the organisation, and most importantly, it's good for the individual.
Big area, complicated area, lots of things, lots of directions that we can go in.
Yeah.
Before I move into the how you got into it, let's try and understand a little bit more about how you go about it. How do you get brought in? Someone, the business is kind of like everyone's, like, do they know what the issue is before you come in? Or like, how do you get brought into a business, and then how do you go about doing the work? Is it like, I do a big interview with everyone and sort of see how things are going on? Like, how do you go about it?
Okay, so what's happening at the moment is, for a while, it's been really through mental health wellbeing initiatives organisations have, and hearing about there's this kind of support available through self-promotion, really, through promotion of what we do. But generally speaking, what we're finding organisations are immediately jumping to, well, let's offer budgeting classes, let's offer pensions classes, let's offer financial education, which is great.
They're very bank-minded. That's like, let's tell them about our other products.
Yes. And it's good to have that suite.
But you need the fundamentals.
Yes,
you need
absolutely.
to be able to pay your bills before you can think about your pension.
Exactly. And boards, to be fair, are starting to wake up to this, just starting to wake up to it. So most of the work at the moment is normally when we speak to well-being leads in organisations, I think we're missing something here.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're doing a lot of great work around mental health as well. And then they raise it with their senior managers and saying, actually, this is a piece of the jigsaw that's missing. Can we get some support coming in? And then we have those discussions. What organisations are missing at the moment is what you've alluded to, is that wider bit of research to understand how big an issue do we have in our organisation? Do we have this issue in our organisation? And how big an issue do we have in our organisation? And there is some reluctance to talk about this as well, because ultimately the fear for the organisation, and it's what I've come across as well, is that they think, we're going to talk about pay rises and everybody's going to want a pay rise. And that's understandable, especially if you're a board and you're looking at where the business is going at the moment against so many other issues that they're faced with, geopolitics at the moment. We're getting the big impacts at the moment, with oil prices shooting through the roof, energy prices going through the roof. How are they going to manage their businesses with those pressures? Never mind the internal pressures that happen to their people. And what I would say, and of course I would say it, is focus on your people as well. Don't forget your people. Great to focus on your customers and how they're going to be impacted by costs of things. That's great. Focus on your people, because your people will help deliver your customers to you. And if there's a difference between your customers and the way you deal with your customers and your people, and I've seen this firsthand with the bank I used to work with, you will lose your people, and that means you start to lose your customers, or your reputation goes down, and you're ripe for a takeover. And the bank I worked with was ripe for a takeover because they actually did that very thing with their people. They didn't care about the people; they cared. They won't say it, but I did write to the retail director and tell them, I'll be quite clear about it. I'm quite happy to say it. You've put your people second or third base here, and how can they be motivated to support you when things are difficult for the business?
Yeah, it's that balance sheet look, isn't it? It's the sort of you're looking at the abstract and you're not looking at the reality right in front of you. You're looking at the sort of, these are names on a sheet, these are numbers, they're interchangeable. Yeah. We've got a knowledge base here. We've got protocols and the things process mapped. We know it. It's like that doesn't know anything. People know things. Machines don't know things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your knowledge, your power is in the people, is in the skills that you have.
It is.
And also, if all the lights have gone out and, there are leaks in the walls, the people can put their finger in the wall. Yeah. Like a machine can't do that necessarily. It's like that. They can bring other things in and they can have ideas.
Yes. So in terms of working with employers, it's helping them understand the scale of the issue. Is there an issue? The scale of the issue, and then what their priorities are in dealing with those issues. Because employers as well, they got very tight budgets too. They're under a lot of pressure. It's where will the best change make the biggest impact? Where will the change make the best impact? Will the support make the best impact? And so, if you understand that, then it's a lot easier to support your people. And the other thing as well that comes across with that, especially when you talk about money, is because a lot of people don't want to talk about money. It's a very private and very personal thing, and we've had that through our culture, I guess. Is it helps to start people feel comfortable about talking about issues, which helps people improve their mental health as well, and it starts to help with the culture of openness within an organisation. And there is a lot of work there's a lot of people I see on LinkedIn groups who are now working on helping organisations improve the culture or move away from the so-called toxic cultures. We've seen quite a few of those organisations in the press recently, and they're saying, we need to go through change and understand that we need to improve our culture. So by having people talk about the things that are most close to them in a safe environment, in a trusted, confidential environment as well, it starts to show to the organisation start to show to their people that actually we are very serious about developing a culture here. That means people can feel safe, because ultimately all human beings will not move in a situation until they feel safe, or until the pain of the problem is so great, then they take action. And that's normally when the bailiff comes knocking on the door, or they get a letter of repossession from the mortgage lender, or they about to have their energy disconnected. That's when that's when we find a lot more people take action, because now it's too great a problem. But so much more can be done beforehand. So
absolutely,
that's what I do. Yeah.
Absolutely, and like you say, it's easy to kind of think, well, why would you be ashamed? But it's the unmentioned thing here is the sort of social standing and the ability to be autonomous.
Yeah.
And losing that control or sense of control over your own life does feel like failure, does feel like something that you don't want to admit.
Yeah.
And like you say, you don't want your standard of living to fall. Like, you don't want things to get worse for you. Things are supposed to get better. So there's a lot of emotional stuff tied up in it as well. And you coming in as a third party not only shows, okay, you can be cynical about how serious an organisation is, but I think spending the money to do something is a good sign. You being external helps with trust to a degree. Some people will be like, I don't want to speak to this stranger, but equally it's like, but it's not directly going to the bosses. There'll be things that are anonymised, I can speak a bit more openly. So you're opening up communication channels in a kind of safe, secure way, ideally. I suppose the flip side is it takes time to build that trust. And also, if you're going to be cynical about the businesses spending money, it's like, well, they've just paid someone to, show that we've done something on this, produce some reports, put up some posters and say, we did all this and now all our staff are happy. What are markers for success for you? Like, if you're going in somewhere, do you have an idea already of what you want to achieve? Or is there these are my ideals, these are my baseline, I want to hit these and then ideally get to this? Okay. How do you envision success? I would guess it's bespoke depending on the organisation, but how do you sort of envision that? Yeah.
My success, or the success of what we do, is really based on the outcomes for the organisation. Yeah. And those outcomes are that they have a quantifiable, measurable way of seeing absences reduce because of stress, particularly financially related. There's a way of measuring that. Same with seeing performance of colleagues, less issues regarding performance of colleagues.
So lower grievances.
Yeah, absolutely. Better attendance. And also reports on how people feel about their well-being, how the organisation is, how people feel supported by their organisation. So there's a great bit of research that was done from the Chartered Institute of Personal Development that showed that where an organisation had a financial well-being policy, just a policy to say, we care about your financial well-being, not even telling them how they're going to do it and what they're going to do it, but the plan or action plan of their strategy, people reported that they felt safer and more insulated from poverty by their employer and less likely to leave their employer because of just having a policy. Mm-hmm. And the number of organisations that have financial wellbeing policies is around 20%, whereas organisations around well over 85% of organisations will have a mental health policy. Mm-hmm. Thinking probably in their mind, I'll tell you what, we've got a mental health policy, that automatically brings in financial well-being. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because how well are organisations seeing reductions in mental health issues at work since they've introduced mental health initiatives? And it's unlikely, and that's what I'm seeing, because we know that people who are in debt, have money worries, are 3 times more likely going to have a mental ill health issue. And if you haven't got the support in place, then it's not going to work. And great stuff. It's great to see the work around mental health first aiders. I absolutely love that work. In the last 10 years, it's gone from where financial wellbeing was about 10 years ago to mental health now is like 80-odd%, if not more, of organisations have mental health first aiders in place or have mental health initiatives, which is wonderful to see. Yet we're still not seeing the big differences because financial wellbeing isn't being addressed more deeply. The biggest external driver for people's mental ill health is financial well-being in the workplace. So if that's not being looked after, how are you going to improve the mental health, ill health in your workforce? It's unlikely to happen. I'd go as far as saying it's not happening. So that's an area to address. And organisations at a higher level, board level, I beg your pardon, are starting to recognise this. And hopefully they'll start to take action with it. And that can help change the metrics that they're experiencing. So measuring for the organisations, what is their financial success going to look like? Is they sustaining their profits? Is that improving? Are they losing less money because of absence, and are they seeing a reduction in absences and better quality work from their people? Are they getting it strategically? Is it better because reputation-wise they're not losing so many people? So if you're worried about your finances, you're going to be looking somewhere else to get a job, and that's what tends to happen. So what's their retention like? Is there a difference there? And then how are they feeling about their reputation as well? Because people want to work for an organisation that cares about them as well. And so it's not just about the pure numbers. So financial, strategic and reputation is being improved. And the reputations, the wellbeing reports that are coming back from their people saying how they feel about their organisation because of the fact they've got these things in place and they feel supported. Not because they've just got them in place, but because they're happening.
Yeah.
They're happening.
Yeah.
That's the key thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you need to see action on it, though.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I mean, this is obviously something that's needed. Well, I'll just ask the question. We'll see where we go from there. So, how did you get into it then? So, how did this come about? You didn't just go, right, what they need is someone... Every business needs someone to go and advise people on how to do their money. Like, there's financial advisors out there for the rich. Ordinary people need some financial advice and support. I'm going to do it. Let's start running companies. I don't imagine it happened like that.
So no, it didn't happen like that, to be fair. I think fundamentally, I'll just probably talk about my ideology, I guess, is that I believe every human being is a sovereign human being. They're special, they're unique. We're all made of ancient sunlight. You know, the planet was made 4 billion years ago, and it's from stardust. Everyone is amazingly unique, and so many of us don't feel like that. But if we just look at that, you know, it's taken 14 billion years of evolution to get us to where we are today, and you're the only one that ever existed. So that's my first view. So if that's my view, then every human being has the right to have a life of dignity and live with dignity and respect for themselves and for others. And if we all did that, then we'd probably be okay. Now, you might call that utopian or whatever. You can call it whatever you want. But when people are smiling, when people are feeling safe about their lives, we tend to have less conflict. We'll have less arguments. It's only when we start to see others doing better or getting resources that we should be having or thinking we should be having them that the division starts. So that's where I come from, ultimately. And in terms of how I got into what I got into, so if I go back to my cricket days, they didn't work out, so I need to get a job, need to do some work. And I was getting on a little bit as well, you know. So I started in financial services, and I started as a financial advisor. For a number of companies I moved through, I became the area expert for a bank. You know, we're looking after a number of branches from what's called regulated advice. So where they had branch managers and they had other financial advisors and they had mortgage advisors, for example. I was the area supervisor for the quality of their work. And
was this pre-2008 or after?
Oh, this is pre-2008. Yes, so way before 2008, in the 90s and into the early very noughties. And then I decided that financial services, I'd had enough of that side of things, where I'd also managed financial advisors as well. I then joined an organisation that was on the flip side of things, where they were actually dealing with complaints against financial services mis-selling, and helped build up, worked with a team where it dealt with complaints against financial services organisations, but also where, let's just say, a client writes into their organisation, you know, whichever bank it is, or insurance company, said, I believe I've been mis-sold a product. And then the organisation looks at their claim and says, actually, we don't believe you have a case. We think we sold it correctly. Then I led a team, it was called the disputes team, that actually looked at those cases and said, no, actually, no, we believe you have been mis-sold. And then we would argue the case for the client and then send it to what's called the Financial Ombudsman Service. And we had a success rate of 67%. In other words, the banks and insurance companies were declining cases, and 67% of them were incorrect.
Yeah, they get the benefit of the doubt all the time, and people have it as well when they ring up for debt collections. Like they're being advised properly by these people.
They're not.
who are not incentivized to advise them correctly.
No.
And people believe them because it's the bank, and it's like, why trust these people?
Well, I used to work for a bank, so I also, so the flip side is that you know, as a financial advisor, your role is to understand the client's needs and the circumstances and give them the best advice on what's most appropriate for the client's needs, not what you think is for the bank's interests or for the organisation's interests. So I really want to be clear on that. And I'd like to think with the organisations I worked with, that's what it was like. I really want to be clear about that. So that was great. And then ultimately, an opportunity came up with the charity in Leeds, a small charity based in Bermatofts, not far from St James's Hospital. And they were launching a new kind of project that they wanted somebody to get involved in training people initially. And I thought, this sounds interesting to me. It's a bit of a departure as well. And it's more about closer to my heart. And so I joined that charity and got that role, and basically working with a lovely lady who Sylvia Simpson, who was project director at the time, said, look, I've come up with this idea, not my idea, her idea, about, because we knew that debt advisors were, this is 2014 now, so debt advisors were being inundated with people needing for help, but like going to a doctor, queue outside because people are struggling with debts and they're getting knocks on the door and all that kind of thing, letters and horrible letters from creditors. So debt advisors are legal advisors. They're trained legally. So if a debt advisor gives advice, it's legal advice. But they also do a lot of other work, and that work they were doing, because they had such a big queue of people wanting to see them, they couldn't do all that work on their own, because otherwise I wouldn't see enough people to give them the advice they need. So Sylvia came up with an idea and said, well, what if we had volunteers who were trained, and this is where I came in, trained to support the work of the debt advisor, for example, help a client fill in a budget, under the supervision of a debt advisor, of course. Help a client write a letter to a creditor, under the supervision of a debt advisor. Help them then check to see if they're entitled to any benefits from any money from the government. And so what happened there is that it took the pressure off the debt advisors. They could do the legal work. The money buddy, it was called, would come in and support the volunteer. They would do the support, other activities. And what we found, because the money buddies were more like peers as well, is people felt comfortable about doing these activities. Because before we had money buddies in place, what was happening is that people would get the advice from a debt advisor and put the letter in the cupboard and not do anything. And their situation would get worse, even though they got advice. Because what we're finding is people weren't comfortable writing letters. People weren't comfortable doing the budgets on their own, or didn't know what to do. And so that links into numeracy is a big issue in this country. Numeracy levels, never mind literacy levels, numeracy levels is a really big issue in this country. So having the money buddy support you and say, well, let's help you do this. And then, by the way, you have a go at this as well. Or showing them how to use the internet to use certain tools as well. Help people feel a bit more confident about actually taking the steps themselves. And so what we found within 12 months of that project rising, the revolving door for advice, the debt advice, dropped by something like 83%. And in Leeds, there's a great organisation called the Leeds Debt Forum, which was linking charities, the DWP, local councillors, city council together from different parts of Leeds as well, coming together each year, having a conference, talking about what the work they're doing to support people. It's called the Leeds Debt Forum. And Sylvia presented to the Debt Forum and told them the kind of work they were doing, what money buddies are doing, and all of a sudden hands start to go up and said, well, that sounds really interesting. Can we have a money buddy, please? Can we have a money buddy, please? So within just over 12 months of setting that project up, we had, from being in one centre in Leeds with a money buddy, we went to being in 37 centres right across the city, working with the council in community hubs, who do great work with the council. And we were lucky to have Leeds City Council, and I will say that. Of course, I've worked very closely with them, so I caveat, but we are very lucky to have them because of their ethos was about supporting people, even through the difficulties over the last 10 years or so. With the cuts they've had, we've still supported people. With the DWP as well, in Leeds, and also with faith groups and the Food Aid Network and the Trussell Trust. All those working organisations working together to have money buddies in their centres has helped. I think when I left the organisation just short of 2 years ago, actually 2 years ago this week, actually, so am I, it helps about 40,000 people out of debt and poverty, which is fantastic. And it's helped keep Leeds steady compared to other cities. Because when I spoke to councillors and MPs from other cities, so we don't have this. We wish we had this. And so Leeds became a bit of a blueprint and a bit of a light bearer for supporting people out of difficulty. It might not seem like it because times are tough, but if we hadn't had the kind of support from the council and from the third sector, other organisations, third sector, we would have been in a much more dire situation akin to some other cities that I could name, which I won't.
I've said this before on the podcast, I'll say it again. Like, we are insulated here. Like, things are bad, but they're worse around the country. Like,
yes.
Things aren't great for Leeds.
No.
And I know some of the stuff about the council.
Yeah.
Like, we're quite well insulated and we're quite lucky with a lot of this. Like, so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
And, we're lucky, I think.
Yeah.
So, when did you start out on your own? When did it become a thing for you to do that?
Coming back to that, so what was happening is, with the cost of living crisis hitting particularly, up to and including COVID, what we already knew that, sadly, people in our city, in our country on low incomes and or in what we call in-work benefit. So they're going to work and are on benefit because employers weren't paying enough. Yeah. And let's be fair about that. Employers will argue, well, we're doing the best. I'm sure they were. I don't want to knock that. Yet, in a way, benefits were substituting employers because employers were benefiting the fact that people didn't have to pay as much. Yeah. So, I understand the business metrics around that as well and the challenges they face. But reality is government was subsidising business by paying credits.
And also, if you can't afford to run your business, you shouldn't be in business. Like, if you can't afford...
It's not a business.
It's
not a business. It's not a business. So basically, what's happening is when the cost of living crisis hit, that's when all of a sudden it became quite media like to talk about it because middle class Britain was being hit. Middle Britain's being hit, and higher income earners are being hit. So in other words, the pain of the problem wasn't just restricted really to people on low incomes. Because perhaps in the past there might have been a mindset that, people on low incomes, so it's because they're on low incomes. Yeah. Maybe they should work harder, study harder, or whatever. And we know that's rubbish.
That's the level that they're at, and they've got no skills,
exactly.
And they're not going to go any higher, so we don't worry about
and it's rubbish. It is rubbish. Yeah. It is rubbish. And sadly, that could have been the thinking. So the media started to jump onto this story quite a lot. And because of the work that Money Buddies had done, we got a lot and the awards that we'd won, because the debt team that we had won Debt Team of the Year nationally, the Centre for Social Justice, which is in Duncan Smith's think tank, awarded Money Buddies. And I also believe that the Shadow Chancellor at the time also liked the work that Money Buddies did, and so did Martin Lewis, which is great, fantastic. And he was also an advocate for the service, and which is really good to see. Really appreciated his support as well. So we'd get calls to do media and talk about what's going on, and then partly because of that, and because of the awards that we'd won, I'd get calls from HR managers of organisations saying, look, we're starting to feel, or HR leaders, we're seeing problems in the organisation. Can you help? And we, as a charity, sort of Leeds based, we didn't have the resources to be able to go national at that time. And also the charity sector funding was starting to get difficult across the whole, with the cost of living crisis hit, government cutting back, funders were cutting back, even though great services across the country, not just our service, but lots of other great charities doing great work, started to struggle. And
because the thing that I'll just put it in the conversation. The thing that we're missing here is that, like, that whole time, the cost of living and like now, people are being squeezed. People are being squeezed out as well, like, and companies are.
Yes.
during this time, companies are going to walk to the wall at a greater rate than they normally would. So we have to, I mean, it's obvious if you know, but if you're not thinking about it, you might not care. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Companies under a lot of pressure, and so many pressures as well. So it's not just that individuals are facing this; it's companies are fighting for survival as well, and doing the best they can as well. And you've got to have great respect for the work that they do too. So I don't want that to come across any other way than that. So we looked at where we're at and thought, well, maybe it's time to move on. And so I took a bit of a break when I left the charity just 2 years ago, and thought, okay, where can I best serve now? Because I love psychology. I love understanding how human beings think. I might talk earlier on about my biochemistry, but I also like to understand how we think and how we behave. And obviously the work that we've done at Money Buddies helped to see, tens of thousands of test cases of case studies of how people are behaving and are thinking about the money. And there were some very similar patterns. So I thought, well, how can I best help now? Especially employers are starting to really feel it. And I thought, okay, let's work with employers supporting financial well-being of their people and supporting the organisation to either reduce the rate of which they're struggling where possible, and or sustain or improve or develop. So I thought, can we do two things here? Yeah. So that's where I set up Moneybeam, and then created a training program called Financial Wellbeing First Aider, with the aim of helping employers upskill particularly the people who work with people. And that could be their line managers, mental health first aiders, payroll, HR leaders, HR managers, who really are the ones dealing with people. Because not everybody will necessarily want to speak to a line manager about an issue, but then they might speak to HR. And HR might then have the skills in place and the information, knowledge to be able to better support their people through a difficulty. So, and the reason why I mentioned payroll, for example, because some might request a pay advance because it's got the gas bill coming up, and so we kind of a pay advance, and because they can't pay it in full, and so payroll might be then skilled and trained to be able to say, well, go a little bit deeper without helping people feel uncomfortable about the issue. Is there anything we can support with? There's some other things we can look at to support you with, for example. And so that's what I'm doing at the moment. That's my primary focus. But I also want to work with the boards so they can see the bigger issue here. So the Financial Wellbeing First Aider, in a way, supports mental health first aid in the workplace, because if we can prevent somebody from going into deep debt collection and going to, getting ill and getting stressed and not going to work, being able to go to work and feel safe about going to work and feel okay, and know that they've got the right support they need to deal with the situation, it creates less stress in the mind. And we know that stress makes people ill. Yeah. We do know, and my psychology hat on here now is that if somebody's stressed for 20 minutes or more, we know that the chemical cortisol starts to damage brain cells, and that can then lead to more chronic illnesses over the longer term. And so if we can prevent that, that's good for everybody.
So what makes a good job, I've heard from a TED talk or something like that, but I tend to agree with this, is mastery, autonomy, purpose. Like a good role should have those. So
okay, yeah.
You improve at what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know why you're doing it, and you have some say over how it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that fits in here. You're empowering. Ultimately, you're empowering the individual so that makes the whole better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's giving control back to the individual of like, you are in charge of your money and you have control over this, and there are things you can do.
Yes.
Where are you going with this? So I'm guessing, I think what I want to make a little bit clearer in my own mind is how much can you do for the individual, and how does that compete with the needs of the organisation that is actually paying you and that you need to deliver. So maybe it was a difficult thing to come to. You had to go through a few iterations before you got the mix right. But how does that tension play into the work?
Okay. Well, both should actually work together.
Yeah.
Because if an individual is speaking to the line manager and the line manager, for example, notices a change in behaviour of their colleague, somebody who normally comes into work always on time, leaves on time and contributes in team meetings, for example. Not everybody has a contribute in a team meeting, to be fair. And they notice a change in behaviour and they're doing a one-to-one, for example. They're doing a one-to-one and just say, how are you doing? I've noticed something recently. Is everything okay? And that can start to open up a conversation. Whereas if you have a situation where another team leader goes in and says, right, you're coming in late, right, you can't do that. It's not on. We're going to put you on some kind of performance plan here, or I'm going to be monitoring your attendance because you're not coming in on time. Now, it might sound a bit odd to say that, but some will do that.
Yeah.
There's two different conversations. And that person is not going to open up and talk about their situation and is probably going to go home and suffer in silence, and the situation gets worse and worse and worse, which impacts, the line manager is now spending more time performance managing somebody, and that's never a nice thing to do. If anybody thinks it's a nice thing to do, it's not a nice thing to performance manage. And then they're also taking up HR time, because that then starts to use legal elements, because HR then need to give their perspective and make sure they're following a certain procedure as well. Again, that doesn't always happen. People take shortcuts, and then that puts more pressure on the individual facing that to perform, and they're under stress. And we know that if you're under stress, you're not going to perform as well, especially if it's continued stress. A few minutes of stress, fine, but not 20 minutes, 2 days or 3 days or whatever it is of stress. That isn't going to help. And so that then means that potentially that person might go further down the disciplinary route. Then the organisation has to make sure it's following a certain process. If it doesn't, it sets itself up for a possible tribunal claim. But also, what's the individual feeling? What's the employee feeling? And being managed out of the business. You need to look elsewhere. And let's say they go and look elsewhere, or they lose their job in the meantime. The employer's going to go and get somebody in to replace them.
And that's man hours,
exactly,
and business costs,
exactly,
non-productive,
exactly,
pursuits.
Exactly. And what if it was a different conversation where the line manager just thought, actually, this is not right. This behaviour is odd to see here. How can we better support you? Let's understand. And it might well be in that immediate conversation that employee doesn't open up straight away, but just has the skill. And not all, it might sound like common sense discussion, but sometimes common sense doesn't prevail in performance management meetings.
Emotions.
Absolutely. But it builds trust, and you start to build trust. People start to talk to you. Right, okay, let's have a look at some way and support here. You could do. Oh, thanks for sharing with me the fact that you have just been told that the bailiff might be coming to your property in the next week. Leave a letter. There is an organisation who might be able to help you. Can I give them a quick call? Not share any names, but can I give them a quick call and just explain what's going on? And they'll tell us what to do. That could happen in 5 minutes. Makes sense, common sense, but it rarely happens. And that could be the difference between that person, the situation of business costing them money, losing personal retention, recruitment as well, and also the organisation losing, and also the individual losing and getting worse, to somebody who actually says, right, thank you for calling that organisation. They've told me to say this to the bailiff and do this. And that's what I do in the training, by the way. I cover that. But they've told me to do this and not to do something else. And I feel safer now because I've had that from the experts. And now I feel safer. And then they follow that process, and they are in a better position of dealing with the longer term issue of maybe being behind on that money, and then getting the advice around that, which means that actually the situation doesn't get any worse. That's the difference.
So, I was going to ask this earlier. How much of it is social prescribing, and sort of, do you do a lot of the same sort of coaching of individuals, or is it very case by case? Okay,
so the work that I'm doing at the moment is working with employers to upskill their people to be able to so that they're trained and have the skills to be able to spot the signs of poor financial well-being and support people through the issues so they get the right advice and support.
Because I would imagine that their knowledge is poor as well.
Yes,
the general knowledge is poor.
Yeah, it is. So by having that skill set, they're in a better position to support individuals. So they have this, if they don't have the conversational skills already, they develop the conversational skills. Mm-hmm. They also develop the skills to be able to spot the signs of poor financial well-being and then be able to support people with any particular issues about what they're facing. Mm-hmm. Not give advice. They're not financial advisors. That's a regulated thing to do. Yeah. In a way, that works a little bit like the mental health first aiders. Yeah. And then they help people feel safe about accessing the right advice at the right time so they get the right support. Yeah. Rather than delay, which is what most people do. Yeah. And then the situation gets worse and worse and worse. And that the individual, the person who's having the issue doesn't sleep well, gets more poorly, it ripple effects with their family, and potentially the situation could be avoided and the remedy could be a much softer remedy than going further down the line. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a weird one that's jumped into my head, but do you ever see people who are really blasé about, or pretending to be blasé, where they're kind of like, you're looking at them and you're like, your financial situation is pretty dire. Like, why are you so chilled about this? Like,
well, yes, that just happened.
Just like, I'm not bothered. What can they do to me? Like,
well, that's going to happen. Yeah. Human beings are amazing creatures, and we've got our own isms about us, and you are going to see that, and that's up to them ultimately. It's not here to tell people what to do or say you must behave in a certain way. It's if somebody's generally concerned about their situation and don't want it to get any worse and would like to improve it, then that help and support's there. But some people, if they don't want it, they don't need to take it. The main aim of my work at the moment is to support the employers' people, to support, as I said, line managers, mental health first aiders, wellbeing champions, HR and payroll, because they're really well placed to support people. And to also help boards and senior management understand the scale of the issue and then put solutions in place that work with where the issues really are and priorities. So it's two-pronged.
Yeah, and there's like loads of variables. So I can imagine situations where you've got, two people on what would be considered decent wages, and one of them has like way more expenditure on the home and on the travel and something. Yeah. And then like those outcomes are massively different, even though it's like two people doing the same job, getting the same pay. But because of all those additional costs and the way it's managed, the results are completely different.
Yeah. Well, ultimately with the financial wellbeing first aider program, that's is if somebody's in crisis, is to what's the right thing to do now to support them to get out of financial crisis. Yeah. And normally when I mean by financial crisis, it'll be there's an emergency. For example, the equivalent of going to A&E, a bailiff is coming to knock on your door. You're going to lose you're going to have your energy disconnected.
Yeah. It's a cost that's going to incur
and it's going to happen right now. Or you're about to be evicted, or you've got a notice of repossession or a notice of eviction. In the financial money advice sector, that's known as a crisis, an emergency. So we need to deal with that first of all, because how can you think about the future when you're in crisis? You're thinking about surviving right now. Yeah. So it's to help people in survival mode survive, and then once you've out of survival mode, you've got the immediate threats dealt with, or being worked with, or being handled in a way that reduces the impact on the individual as much as it can do, because not all the time it can be, because it might have gone too far. But getting all the advice and the right advice and support right at the time they need it, then it's right, okay, where do we build from here? So that's where the well-being bit comes from there as well, the financial well-being. So it's out of crisis. So financial well-being first aider. The first aider bit is let's make sure you're out of crisis, first of all. And this is what you need to do to get out of crisis. Then the next steps are, how can we help you improve your financial well-being. And that can be through a combination of things like financial education, literacy. So, for example, budgeting, we can talk about pensions, investment savings, all sorts of things, making sure your family's okay if anything happens to you. But that's a plan. And that, by the way, I'm not involved in any financial products or I'm not involved in anything like that. It's not my role. I don't give financial advice. I don't do that. It's about helping people get to the right people, right places. I have no deals with anybody. Yeah. It's none of that.
Well, mostly you'll be using charity services or recommending.
And normally these are free to access and free to use services. Because they should be. So it's making sure that people then know what to do to improve the situation. And for some people, it's just a bit of financial education. What I will say, and a myth I want to demystify here, is that people on low incomes are the best budgeters. They're not the worst. I really, really gets under my skin when people say, "Oh, they're spending all their money on booze and fags and whatever."
They're doing magic.
No, they are absolutely. I like that phrase, and I'll borrow that phrase. They are doing magic nothing because their budgeting skills. People on higher incomes who don't budget every month, whatever, if they don't, they could learn a lot from that. Okay, so let's dispel that myth straight away. I want to get rid of that myth. They're really, really good with money. It's just that situations hit them, usually, or redundancy or job loss or even benefit cut was a big one. When the government cut the limit on 2 children, this has been lifted this week, which is great, but the cap on children, that would put a lot of people into immediate issues and poverty. It should never have happened.
And it's amazing how small an amount can devastate huge numbers of people.
No, yeah.
If you take in, I don't know, £10 or whatever off someone a month, like that, a huge difference. That's
yes.
Can I pay this bill? Can I eat? Can I?
Yes. Yeah. Well, when you see people come into your centre and they've got children and they've got massive holes in their shoes, if they're wearing shoes, that tells you that £10 a month could make a big difference. Yeah, that tells you that.
Yeah. I mean, because it's such a big area, I'm tempted to take us off into all sorts of tangents, but I'm going to keep control and not go too far off. So I'm going to jump us into the COVID question.
Okay.
I think more stuff will come out as we go.
Okay.
So I don't know how long we'll spend on this because I don't know how much this will sort of play into everything else. So with lockdown, I mean, you're in the kind of area where you can work from home. Mm-hmm. So I generally want to look at with the question, what was the experience going into lockdown? How did things change for you at the time? And then coming out of lockdown, wherever that is on the timeline for you, what sort of changed permanently for you in terms of, if anything did? I would imagine it did, and I would imagine mostly that's sort of doing more meetings online and so on. But what was your experience?
Okay, so I was at the charity when COVID hit us, and basically we were still open, and we were one of the few services where could still see people face to face in certain areas under certain conditions, because it was deemed to be a necessity. Yeah. Because, of course, when people are suffered with losing their incomes, and when COVID hit, it wasn't clear who was going to get support or who wasn't going to get support, particularly the self-employed. Yeah. Certainly for a few weeks, the self-employed were left pretty much out on the limb, and it's a pretty scary time. So we were able to offer some face-to-face support with all the COVID restrictions in certain centres and Leeds, which is great. And that was working very closely with the council and support of certain councillors as well, which is fantastic. For us operationally, we basically worked from home. So all our, for anybody who wasn't doing a face-to-face meeting with the client, they would work from home. So a lot of remote working. So it wasn't hard overall. It was just getting used to working from home. And for some people, that suited them as well, to be fair.
Did you have space for that, or were you working on the kitchen table?
If you talk about me personally, I had some space for that. I was very fortunate. But I do know some colleagues who were working on the kitchen table. Yeah, which is not easy. Yeah, not easy. But we did our best because we did risk assessments, and we're we want to make sure everybody was safe.
Yeah.
And so we did our risk assessments, and people self-declared their risk assessments as well, to be fair. Yeah. But it didn't impact us as operationally as much as we thought it might do.
So what about the service level, like demand? I mean, did that just skyrocket?
Demand went down for a while, actually, overall.
Nobody knew what was going on.
Absolutely. Nobody knew what was going on, but we knew it was going to come further down the line, which it did. When it came fast and it came hard. And we already had people, our colleagues, who were already working flat out as it started to rise. And then when it hit us, when things opened up, it was just very, very difficult. And it was easy for me because I wasn't seeing clients. Yeah. But our teams, our money buddies, our debt advisors, our colleagues on reception, on the phones, and my hat, if I could give them as big a pair of eyes as possibly could have, we would have done. There was just, my hat goes off to them. But for me, it was right, just supporting as best we can and trying to get the funding in to support the team, really, and keeping that message going out there. So COVID, yes, it impacted, but we, with Sylvia's leadership, we had a really good way of working and keeping things going afloat. And if I remember rightly, we were the only debt advice service allowed to do face-to-face in Leeds. If I remember rightly. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure on that. I'm pretty sure we were the only one who was able to do it, which is great. But then when but what we did see is we saw a lot more self-employed people contacting us for help. And what was really interesting is people who'd never claimed benefits always thought that benefits was quite generous.
Living the life.
Yeah, and then realised
you were expecting to live on this.
Is all I get? Is that? Yeah. But I thought it did, and that changed the mindset of many people with benefits, because we probably have the worst level of benefits in the Western world. I would probably say. I think the United Nations at the time did a review on benefits in this country and came to a similar conclusion. We were not generous, and we made it hard for people. And particularly, when COVID hit and self-employed, well, what do I get? And then obviously the Chancellor did make some changes and allowed self-employed to get more loans and what have you, which still I find a bit odd. That's low for some and none for others.
It was another one of those things where it was sort of a bit like the bailouts. So like, maybe you should have put some conditions on that.
Yeah.
Maybe not just give people money.
It's a hard one, though, to be fair. And
you've got to act.
Yeah, you've got to act. And whoever's in power at that time, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. The good thing is that when furlough came in, it meant that people had enough money to be able to keep going. It would have been catastrophic if you'd not been able to keep the economy moving in one way, at least. Keeping it going. Even though it's slower, keeping it going was important, for so many reasons. So, putting politics aside, I think the Chancellor did as good a job as he could have done, to be fair.
Yeah, it is one of those weird ones where you're like, they made a big mess of it, but also it was a very difficult thing to
very difficult.
do. There is no way we're not going to make a mess. Yeah. You can make a mess in a different way.
Yeah.
But, it's easy to sort of armchair all
absolutely.
That stuff.
And the hindsight stuff, when you're faced with making a decision, you've got to make a decision.
And you don't know really what's going on. It is a novel virus. I've heard a lot of people do this sort of conversation of why were they coming out here, like now? Like, why are they coming out and saying this is the science, follow the science? It's like, you don't know the science because we haven't got the science.
Exactly. And if in doubt, you make sure.
Be
what
more
do you do?
Honest with people.
Yeah.
Like,
if in doubt, keep people safe. What's the safest thing to do?
Yeah.
It's hard. So those decisions were made. To keep people It's a what do they call it in psychology? A reptilian brain response. Defend, protect. Just hide. And if people say, well, it was wrong at the time. Well, here's one that really hit the nation in 2008 when we had the financial crisis. What did big British business do at the time? Our corporates, they held back a lot of their money that they invest and put it in. They nearly doubled their cash holdings between 2008 and 2012. Well, that money could have gone to the economy. There was no investing. So that really affected the economy. And that was a reptilian brain response as well. Let's keep our money, let's save our money because we can't take risks. So, but then don't criticise the government for what they did in 2021.
But I feel some of that's the same with post-COVID, is that, you had all the money that was like kind of given out. You had that big glut of buying, and then because it wasn't just Russia, there was the so-called pent-up demand, and then we had that interest rate rise, which kind of tapered it down, and then obviously Russia and all of that. But it's sort of, I think obviously the whole equation's changed again now, but I think there was a period of time where there were a lot of people with lots of money that they weren't spending because the confidence wasn't there, and that would have been really useful to be going around at the time, because it's like, okay, you're hanging on to that because you've no confidence that the thing is going to be there, but also now the thing's definitely not going to be there because they've gone out of business. So it's the trust and confidence as well.
It's human behaviour. If in uncertainty, very few people will take the risk. They'll hoard, they'll hold back, and that's human psychology. And it's not necessarily rational behaviour, yet it is how humans behave. And the thing that I find really odd here is that governments expect or people expect people to behave rationally, and they don't.
No.
They build their models on rational behaviour. They don't. They're not rational. I don't mean that disrespectfully to anybody listening, but we're not generally rational in the first.
We are emotionally connected to other people. Emotionally, we're not rationally connected to people. We don't go, "Oh, you're a jolly good chap. I'm going to be involved with you." Like, you do at a level, but it's more about like how you get on, like emotionally, where your sympathies lie, how you sort of express things, what your ideas are, these kind of things, and where those overlap. All these complicated areas, and it's not about, oh, well, this is the best price and I have the money to buy it, so obviously I'll buy this now. And this is great for me and my life has improved. It's like there's so many other things in there.
Yeah, there are complexities. Ultimately, we're fear drives a lot of human behaviour, and fear of loss or fear of change, and so when you had a credit crisis 2008 hit, the complete uncertainty. So what do people do? They save what they've got. Let's told it. Let's go to an individual household. If somebody's told there might be some redundancies coming in the next 6 months of restructure, what do people do? Start saving, holding back, just in case. And so that's just human nature, and it takes a little bit more conscious effort. Effort's the wrong phrase here. It takes a bit more consciousness to step back. Sit down and have a look at this and think, really, what is the reality here? So, for example, if getting political for a minute, what's happening at the moment or happening in the last few years, really, is because the economy's been shrinking. Really, people have really been feeling the pinch since 2008. It's really been since 2008. We haven't really recovered from that, and people have seen a downgrading in their lives overall since 2008, and it's not got any better. It's not getting any better. Then we're blaming immigration. We're blaming certain groups of people not doing their work. We're blaming people on benefits. We're blaming, on the other hand, we're also blaming billionaires for making a load of money as well, which, if they produce something that's really good and good for the services, well, fair enough. So, but the point is that we're being told to blame people. And it's not. It's the thinking behind it. That's the problem. We're not talking about helping people feel safe. We're not saying, what can we do to help you feel safe in your work? What can we do to help you feel safe in your life? And if we help people feel safe in their life, and the thing is, I've got my home, I've got income coming in, and I'm okay in my relationships. For those three things, we've got that sort of tripod of legs. We tend to be stable. We have quite a happy life, really. Yeah. But if one of those things is threatened, then it wobbles. And at the moment, we've got income and we've got work, are really under threat, really wobble. Relationships, well, I won't get into relationship advice or anything like that. But if those two things are wobbling and they're really wobbling, well, some people will project their pain on others to seem to be doing okay. And anything that justifies and supports that argument they'll that's everybody's like that, and others will withdraw. Yeah. And so we have a real problem at the moment. The ones withdrawing, we don't know what how they're going to vote next time, in which way they're going to go. And they might think, change is better, so let's go to another party because change is better. Where actually that party might be the ones who are throwing the blame out. And then that really destabilises us. Well, hopefully if people can see what's happening in America, they might realise that could happen over here.
You would like to think so, wouldn't you?
You would, but then that's a rational statement, and it's not.
And that's not how media works.
No.
I mean, I don't know if you... Do you know Stuart Lee?
No.
Media. He's been on a bunch of stuff recently and banging on about, we need to start having a go at the media, stop taking the mickey out of these random sort of, non-famous, famous people and start really honing in stuff like the media, because it's not just the politicians lying to us. The media has consistently failed us for decades now. You can pick any sort of line for that, but just the fact of the matter is they have failed us consistently for decades.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, it's the media. I think any sector can in a way, but I remember doing a copywriting program many years ago, just to improve my copywriting. I'm not saying it is improved, and I remember the person leading the program. He said that 80% of people do not read past a headline. Yeah. And that headline can dictate how people think. So if people are reading certain newspapers, let's say, for example, or see something on a website, they draw, if that still holds true, which I've got evidence to say it doesn't, that's where we're getting our information from. And then some people go on to read the bit underneath it, the sub-headline. Now, I'm not a media person, as you can tell. But if that's where the majority of people are stopping at, and then maybe hearing what they hear being repeated, they believe, the human brain just goes on repetition, works on repetition. So, people being manipulated, and they might not realise they're being manipulated because they think they've read it, they've heard it, they've worked it all out. But so many people in media or certain politicians understand how people's brains work. I don't mean about all the thinking process, all the thinking going on, but they understand the process of how we create pictures in our minds, how we create stories in our minds, how we create habits to, what we react to, what the triggers are, what one part of our brain is all set up to respond to. They understand this, and they will keep on doing this at you. Yet we think it's us making the decision, and we're not. And so when we're in the voting booth, when people think, I'm not sure who to vote for, the brain just picks out noise sounds or sound bites it's heard recently. That must be the right one. And there's a possibility they might make the vote there. And that's actually how marketing works as well to a great degree. So we have a lot more brainwashing going on than we think is going on. And the media, or certain elements of the media might be like that. But when you have the media who try and break things down a bit more and try to put a rational case, it's not everybody will want to read it because it means the brain has got to work harder. And the brain is programmed not to work harder unless you say, I want to work harder.
Yeah, energy conservation.
Yeah. Its main premise is energy conservation. Yeah. So and it requires rational thinking to say, no, I'm going to read this. Yeah. And then your brain uses more energy. So if people recognise that lovely 2-pound organ in their brain, their head, the brain, uses about 25% of the energy needs that you need in a day. And that's just to stay going. Yeah. Okay, so to use energy for human beings, getting food was not easy 10,000 years ago. But we have an operating model that's at least 1 million years old. And it's been based on famine, saving energy. And it's only recently.
The rarity of sugar.
Yeah, at the rarity of that. But now, we can have those food sources, but we're still operating the old system. So that's why people don't have to work harder to think, I don't want to read that. I don't look at that. It's just too much to look at. You just automatically see a big paragraph. Oh no, I do it. Oh no, I don't read it. And then I have to stop myself and read it. So that's what's happening. And so when we've got certain politicians who understand how that works, they will speak and use their voice in a certain way that's very rhythmic. And they'll also make sound bites and repeat them. And then people think it's true. Oh, that's where I got information from. And I'm not knocking people for thinking like that. It's because that's how we've been programmed to set up. That's our operating model. And so the politicians who really, I think, really care need to communicate like that, because otherwise they lose people. They get done for being boring or being a bit, old school, or a bit, or a bit stiff. When reality is they just want to go have a deeper discussion with you to let you know what really is happening. But they can't, because your brain won't let them go that far.
So I've ummed and ahed about whether I want to go Brexit or social media next, because I think both would be really interesting with you. I'm going to go for Brexit. Has anything changed for you since Brexit, since we've left the EU exit? Has it changed your work at all?
It's made it. It's amplified. It's been a big contributor to the fact that I've got people struggling financially.
So it's growing your market.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's growing the market. It's growing the market.
You were a profit-making business.
It was always tough before that, to be fair, but it was just really more less of a market. Yes, it has grown the market, but on a personal level, it's made me feel unsafer for society. And do I feel unsafe? Maybe I feel less safe than I did before, but I still feel okay. But I think it's made society less safe, and it's also made society more divisive. I remember there's a book I read. Oh gosh, I forgot the name of it now. An essay written by the guy who set up Bloomberg TV, or somebody who worked at Bloomberg TV, which is a big American business news channel, and a British ambassador. The Wake Up Call, it's called. And they said in that essay of a book that Brexit was Britain's civil war, and it really did divide Britain in a big way, because it was an emotional issue. We could argue what those emotions were, but ultimately it was argued on sovereignty, or what is British and what is not British in effect, really, or the British identity, or what a British identity is. And we're still seeing the ripple. Well, I don't know. I still think the tsunami of that's still coming through, to be fair. And the next elections in May might start to show surface, and possibly the general election in 3 years' time. We'll start to see if that's still coming through. So Brexit has been a disaster for the country, and it's separated us from the key allies in Europe, and it might not have separated us from our allies across the pond until there was a change of president. And now we're seeing...
certainly put us in a weaker position.
Yeah. And now we're seeing ourselves being isolated from them. Mm-hmm. So, who's really our true friends? That's for others to make up their own mind on. Yeah. But who's really our true friends? And the fact that, our petrol prices have gone up. If you're on diesel, it's gone up, 25, 30% in the last few weeks. Businesses worried about how they're going to manage, keep sustain profits and sustain their people. Yeah.
So I'll just ask you, I won't sort of set it up, I'll just ask it kind of straight out. How does climate change play into your work? Is it a factor for you? Is it something that you think about? Does it come up? Does it come up in terms of the conversations with people, in terms of how they're thinking about their money? Or
to be honest with you, direct with you, it doesn't really come up directly. I think when it comes to people who want to look to, when they talk about investments, I'm finding people be more thoughtful about, considerate about where their investments are going, which organisations. But that's not really an area that I get so involved in, to be fair. So in terms of is it directly affecting me? Not really, no.
So I said this is, with climate change, it's an energy crisis.
Okay.
It's how we're going to get the energy, how the energy is produced, what the energy does, what it's used for, all of these kind of things. Of the many things that money can be, especially now in an age of electronic money, money is energy.
Yes.
You know?
Okay. Right.
And outside of the sort of fantastical thinking of neoclassical economics, which we've already discussed, the rational being person who doesn't exist, like, you can't just produce stuff with just people and
right.
like a bit of money.
Right.
You need energy in the mix, especially if you've got machines and investments and all of this kind of stuff. But as well within the spending, like I used the example of someone getting in for a commute. Like, you go on a bicycle, if that's realistic for you, you've saved however much in petrol at pre-prices.
Yeah.
Given that those prices are going to escalate, like, that is an area, or even the energy supplier, like who you're using for your energy supply.
Okay.
Like, all of these are your, what do they call them? Not the cost that you've got to pay before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
okay. So I think from that perspective, with energy and how with climate change, in terms of, I think the energy crisis that we're having or about to have on a large scale, if things get worse, is that yes, that's impacting people's day-to-day lives, and we're just going to see more people already worried about the finances now. They'll be thinking about what's my winter bills going to be looking like. Thinking, okay, we're just coming into spring now, and then we've got summer hitting us hopefully in a couple of months' time properly, and it'll be warmer, so we won't need as much energy, so to speak. But that's a temporary reprieve, and it's uncertain. The world has become uncertain again, and then the knock-on effects, because oil touches just about every product on the planet, as far as I'm aware of, just about every product and just about so many processes about making stuff.
We're sitting on oil.
Yeah, exactly. It's all oil. It's all over us. Inflation is a worry. So then the Bank of England are now warning that interest rates might not come down at all, might possibly even go up again. We know that fixed rate mortgages have been pulled from the marketplace, or if they're coming back in, it's going to be much higher fixed rates. The Bank of England are warning at 2028 there's going to be another one. I think 1.3 million people. Mortgages are going to be significantly higher than they thought they were going to be. So again, the uncertainties come back again. So the cost of living bubble that was blown in 3 years ago, blown up, is coming again because oil's touching everything. And all right, we've seen massive petrol prices already over the last few weeks, particularly for a diesel driver, which I am. I caught the bus in today and did a bit of walking as well. But that is going to have a ripple effect through the summer. And we've already seen over the last 3 or 4 years the impact of local businesses just putting the prices up. You know, I don't know how many people got Easter eggs this year, but the Easter eggs chocolate tastes a little bit different, and you got less of it, and you paid a lot more for it. What was it? Am I allowed to say this? I opened up a club of biscuit the other day and thought, that is tiny. The chocolate on it is so thin, it's tiny. That's not a club.
If you like a bit of chocolate.
Yeah, if it is a little bit. Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, if you like a little bit of chocolate. Yeah, well, they've got it right now, haven't they? Yeah, if you like a little bit of chocolate, absolutely right. So that's going to get worse. So that, in a way, climate and energy crisis is feeding into this now. And then if we talk about climate and energy, we've got AI AI is hitting us now, but that's just baby AI. We haven't seen the general AI, AGI, I think it's called. Yeah, the general AI, which is coming out towards the end of next year, which supposedly, which is thinking and really all dancing compared to what we have at the moment, which can make its own mind up and make decisions without a human being being involved in that. So, and then so many jobs being impacted regarding that. So in terms of how it's affected me, what that's going to do is organisations who are having to deal with all of that, because I feel sorry for boards, to be fair, they've got all that to deal with and navigate through that and navigate through the people maze. So in a way, it amplifies the work that Moneybeam and I do, and probably other organisations in that space do, really does, because people will need navigating through that and support through that. And then it puts pressure on government to be able to provide support as well, and the charities. So yes, from that perspective, it's going to get even more difficult for lives. And then we've got the social side of that around, probably outside of the remits of my work here, but how do we manage populations? But the changes that are going to come of that. But then it's a bit odd to say climate change, because AI, for example, is energy hungry, really energy hungry, and the planet's going to need to produce more energy to be able to feed AI for it to do the jobs, the work that certain organisations think it can do at the expense of human beings.
But right now we can't produce
energy. No. Or if we do, it's using, fossil fuels or whatever, which is just not good for the planet. So there's a bit of a conundrum. So ultimately, the climate change is going to lead to change for humanity. Ultimately, about how we operate and how we think and how we live. And I'm hearing the phrase universal high income being touted now. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and Elon Musk was talking about, first podcast I've ever heard of Elon Musk, actually, to be fair, where he's not ranting or raving in the White House, but with a big sort of electric saw or something, chainsaw. But he's talking about the world needing a universal high income, where there is still commerce going on, but we still need to make sure that everybody has money to be able to trade so that we can continue living. That's really interesting. So that's how I think climate change will affect us in that respect. Other than protecting the planet is what we need to do.
I mean, I'm trying to think how to phrase the question, but would there be, like you were talking about the co-working with mental health people, would there be, or is there scope, or is it useful, however you want to kind of picture that, like for something around energy or something around climate in terms of the impacts that you're making? Because even with something like, okay, so we're going into the hotter months, if you're in a house that really captures heat and we have a hot year and you've got weeks at 30 odd degrees and you're not used to that heat and it's really punishing and you're paying to cool the house or something like that, so you now have an expense in the summer to run something cooling the house. I mean, these kind of things, I'm just using them as bits of examples.
I think it's an evolution of the work that we do, I do. Okay, so I think at the moment there's so many people.
I'm not trying to add more to
There's so many people at the moment in crisis mode, and actually they don't know they're in crisis mode. They're just feeling the pain of it, but they don't know they don't necessarily know the ramifications of the crisis on them from organisations. They're not necessarily aware of the ramifications of not taking action on the crisis. So really, financial wellbeing first aid is about helping people out of crisis and then get into thriving mode and to move through that. And so what we've got when you talk about energy is, if there are initiatives to help people save money and or become more fuel efficient as well, which normally money would mean, then we obviously want to bring those into part of the support that's available. So yes, in that respect. So it's always looking to see what is support available to help people improve their financial situation, in other words, save money, ultimately, or have their money go further, last longer. Yeah.
So we've got social media, we've got the UBI question and the change question. I think the one that I'd most like your input, like the social media, I think would be interesting, but I don't think we've time to explore that. So I think the universal basic income, and get your take on that. So my question is, how would it change your work? And obviously, for you, it would be massive, but I don't think it would eliminate your work.
No, it won't. No, it won't.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, I assume you're familiar with the idea and you're aware of this. So what are your thoughts on kind of basic income? What do you see could be helpful and what do you see as potential downsides, perhaps?
Okay, I think it's inevitable that we're heading towards universal basic income. And the reason why I say that is because I think AI is going to make a big inroad into the economy at pace of change. And so that means that organisations will let people go in numbers, large numbers. And just a little bit like when we had furlough, because furlough in a way was universal basic income, certainly for people who are employed, unless you're in a particular service and the national need service or whatever at the time, or self-employed for a while. So basically that was a bit of an experiment, and it kept things flowing. People could go to supermarkets, could people buy things, people could get people, workers to come and do some work on the house if they're doing it safely and everything. So it's inevitable because AI is going to come in fast and hard. And we're hearing Musk on the other side of the world talking about he's going to build his robots by this time next year. There's going to be these Optimus robots, and they're going to have AI in them. And then he's talking about by the end of 2027, there will be a lot of robots. I mean, he's building 8 million square feet of industrial space just to build his robots. So just on that person's plans, and then talking about them making them really dexterous so they can do a lot of things with their, be as good as surgeons, basically. That's where they're headed. So if we've got that across many different areas of work, that's going to happen fast. The only thing that will slow that down is the politics stopping it. Otherwise, it will come through because business will want it because, hey-ho, it saves money. So at some stage, when you have so many people not being able to work or want to set up their own business, for example, how do we keep the economy circular? How do we keep things moving? And the obvious answer is a universal basic income, unless you want people to die of starvation. So it's going to happen at some stage. And it's really, I think, driven by the rate of pace of change and how quickly that technology just takes over so many current occupations. I'm not saying new occupations will arise. I'm sure they will, but it's just how quickly. So how do you keep society going? And that's going to happen.
So as an additional question on that, how do you stop everyone's UBI going to one guy? Like, the sort of thing of like, the experiment, everyone gets $100 on the island and then soon one person ends up with all the money and no one's got any money. So how do you, because this is in line with work that you do, what are the kind of things that you see will maybe need to be in place? Like, I'm not asking you to answer it, but what do you foresee? It's like, what interventions might you need to make?
I think this stems from all the work that we've ever done with money, really. It's ultimately about how people think and behave with money.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is driven from automatic processes that we think are normal from our experiences, particularly as children. And you might have seen that Barclays advert where it talks about all the young children, our attitudes towards money is formed by the age of 7. Pretty much our attitudes and our habits and our thoughts and beliefs are pretty much in place by that on any aspect of our life, really.
Yeah.
And then that's reinforced or it's knocked off its ledge by the experiences we have or the traumas that we have, either positive experiences or negative experiences, traumas through our lifetime, either reinforces, knocking it off. So it's ultimately about us as individuals looking at ourselves as people. If we only go past, if 80% of the population just go past 1 or 2 headlines in a newspaper, how many of us are really reflecting on ourselves and who we are? But ultimately, that's the thing that will make the change in terms of how people manage and behave with their money in the future. But in terms of stopping it going to one particular person, I don't know if we can do that, because it depends on what products and services and what carrots are being dangled for us to go, ultimately. Are we going to have one singular corporation running the whole planet at some stage? Well, we're in the world, businesses in the world are bigger, better, faster. You either take over somebody or you get taken over. So ultimately, is there going to be this one? Ultimately, and who's that going to be? Or is it going to be a handful? Who knows? But ultimately, it's helping people. Ultimately, it's our own psychology is the bit that actually helps us make our way through our life, be it with money or relationships or anything else.
So we're just going to do those last couple of questions.
Okay.
So I'll ask about social media first. Just had a little bit of a chat about this, but how does social media affect your work? So I asked this because I think even if you're not in a social media role, workplaces are getting more people to do stuff. It's more and more part of our job to be on social media.
Okay.
So how does it play into your work? Do you have to spend a lot of time on there? And do you find that time is well used? Is it a good investment of your time?
Yeah, I think social media is an important part of my work. as well for a number of reasons. It allows me to connect with people I need to connect with as well, particularly decision makers and or people who are supporting others who are not quite sure of what to do and where to go and get that support from and looking for help. Also, I think as well is that allows me to put information support out there for people, for organisations and for individuals, and also promotion. Let's be really honest about that. And I think it has its place for supporting organisations. So yes, I find it useful. I find it very helpful. In terms of reliance on it, I think we need to be careful. I think if you talk about media, any kind of remote media generally, so we might talk about education platforms. So it's good to be able to support with some services online. If I just go to online for a minute now, social media is an aspect of that. But I think organisations can become too reliant on just using the remote format as a way of saying we're supporting somebody. And the reason why I say that is I go back to when I was at Money Buddies particularly, is you can put somebody in front of a computer, they learn fine, the retention isn't as great. But when you have a face-to-face element, particularly the grounding is in face-to-face, that you see the uptake response, the response, the outcomes are better, greater because of that face-to-face. And we're human beings and we mustn't ever forget that. We are wired to connect. We've gone through millions of years of evolution to read each other's body language, to understand people's tone of voice, and to see that two-dimensionally body language on computer is not an easy thing to do. Even when we send emails or text messages to each other, they can be misinterpreted and misread if not supported by that visual cue. And I mean that 3D visual cue. So unless we create some great technology that really transmits us in a 3D, catches everything, we're missing a lot from the human interaction. We have these micro muscles on our face that move imperceptibly almost, but there's a part of our brain that picks it up beyond our actual visual elements, and that's noticing cues as well, and that helps us get a gut reaction about somebody. You can't pick that up, or it's very hard to pick that up on a flat screen unless you're really trained to do so. So social media really has its place, and I think it goes to anything. Is what am I using it for? Why am I using it? What is it? How is it serving my business? How is it serving me as a person to be able to communicate my message? So yes, I think it's a really important tool, but I think we just need to not forget that as an individual and in business, that we can't forget the face-to-face element. And of course, we know that costs more money. We know. And if you're an organisation trying to save a lot of money, become more efficient, you either think, well, we'll use remote, digital, or we'll cut services to do so, or get in that arena, or follow the flow of what everybody else is doing. And we'll come back and say, actually, it's face-to-face that we needed in the first place. So, we can get caught up in the fad, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, some of that's design, isn't it? It's kind of like using the right tool for the right thing. I would imagine with your work, like, how much do you need to advertise anyway? There'll be a lot of demand. You probably have, quite well connected and probably get recommendations. What's your busyness like?
Yeah,
Are you constantly busy? Or?
No, it varies. And I think,
sort of have a shape.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. Well, it's more, it's been slower in some areas than in other areas. And that's because really, I'm not doing what so many other people in the space are trying to do, which is talk about financial education. Let's do budgeting classes. Let's do pension classes. I'm not trying to do that. I could do, but I'm not aiming at that. I'm working and aiming at boards and senior leaders, because ultimately businesses are going to need to make bigger changes. And at the moment, well-being generally is still seen as a nice thing to do. It will become an essential. It's becoming an essential. So for me, it fits and starts, to be honest with you, because of that. And it's really about presenting the business case to organisations as to why they should be looking at this. So it's being both rational and emotional, because both things, but really the rational side for businesses, because I know we spoke about rationality and emotionality earlier on, but ultimately when you're speaking to a senior leadership team, they're going to be looking at it from a purely business point of view, and how is that helping them now and in the future. So if we can show and demonstrate the cost from absenteeism, presenteeism, where people are at work but not really thinking about their work. If we can show the impacts on people's mental health, if we can show the actual financial cost of that, which we can do, then the more they've got a business case to be able to pursue and get support in that area. And it's only now really where businesses are waking up to that, really from a business point of view, rather than, well, let's just do it as a nice to do or meet our ESG requirements.
So if you producing social posts or like marketing, I don't know if you've put a strategy in place or like how you've worked this, but how much of it do you do the sort of focus on your expertise, do you give any free stuff away? Do you put any kind of like advice, or do you do more sort of professional posts where it's like, I talked to a client about this and this is how I help them? It's
evolving. It's still developing. To be fair, it's going to be a mixture of all of those. Yeah. But at the moment, what I'm really focusing on is the problems they're experiencing. Yeah, that's what I'm really focusing on, because I don't want to talk about myself too much. I might have done the last couple of hours, but I don't want to talk about myself too much. I want to talk about what's their world like, and what was their world, what could their world be like if they had this in place, compared to if they do nothing. And I can just say to an employer, well, what's the cost of doing nothing? Well, I can demonstrate the cost of doing nothing is you're going to lose at least £380 per employee per year. In fact, it's more like £424 per employee per year. And allow me to show you the evidence of that.
Yes.
So that is starting to wake up the minds.
And that's talking, business
language. That's our language.
Measured, here's an amount on it.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying.
But I don't want that to be the only driver. Because it's sounds a bit glib, I think, and can come across as being a bit arrogant on its own. But ultimately, I say to organisations, even if you weren't the most caring organisation in the world, not because you really care, this is what's costing you. So do you want to, it's your choice. Where do you want to go with this? Ultimately, it's happening. Just like, if you're worried about not taking up AI, because others are, it's the same thing. If you're not taking this up, then this is you're leaking money, and you're leaking reputation, and your strategy could be affected. So it's a combination of those things. But ultimately, it's individuals being safe and organisations prospering as well. But not one against the other.
Yeah. Well, you're going for the win-win, aren't you? So win-win-win.
Win-win. Well, ultimately, if society stays safer, we don't argue. It's that period before Christmas when most people are kind of like get into a good mood, even if they're struggling, but still get into a good mood. Well, is there any reason not to keep that good mood? I'm not saying Christmas every day, but isn't there a reason to keep people safe and give less to argue over?
Yeah, and on the flip side, we are humans. We need a range of emotions. We have the whole emotional spectrum to use, and we shouldn't just be permanently happy, and nor would we.
Yeah, well,
in any case. But if most things are decent and good for us, that's surely a net gain for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the change question, which I think will be really interesting.
Okay.
So it'd be, I wonder what you're going to pick out here. So I say 3. It doesn't have to be 3. You can pick more if you want. If you could change any 3 things about your work, what would you change? Doesn't have to be realistic, but they can be very realistic and practical.
Well, I think the first thing would be that we shouldn't need to be doing it.
Yeah.
Just like we're in the charity, we shouldn't need to be doing it because we don't need to, people don't really need to be in debt that they can't afford to pay the debts.
Yeah. It's common knowledge. People are not doing it.
Yeah. So that would be the first thing. But if we weren't changing that because we weren't getting help, so I think what would help change that is, and it's starting to happen now, is 2 things. We need to have education on how our brain works. how it works, and it's there. The knowledge is there. How it works, why it pays attention to certain stimuli below our level of awareness, and what's going on. It's quite simple. It's really, and actually, I deliver this as part of the training I do. Sales bit here now, as part of the financial wellbeing first aid training, I share that in the training, and that is the bit of feedback. I mean, I've had really great feedback on the training, but that's the bit where some people go, aha, the aha moments drop for them on themselves, never mind for the people they're going to support. Because what it also helps people do is realize that the people in front of them, when they've got difficulty, don't judge them anymore. The judgment goes, because there's so much judgment about other people's money, especially when they've made mistakes or they've got into difficulty, what seems like a mistake. There's so much judgment around it. No. And when we speak about how the brain operates, for all of us, because we're all the same, we've all got the same brain model, the number of chins that drop, and I'm not just saying it to sell the program, even though it's worth attending, of course it is. Now that's why that happens. Now I know why I do what I do. And then that changes the view to the people they're helping, if they didn't want to help anybody in the first place, but they do. And also, it takes the pressure off themselves a bit as well. Don't beat yourself up when you've made a mistake.
Why people take on responsibility of like, this is my fault, when they're up against multi-million, sometimes billion-pound advertising campaigns to make them see something that isn't true or isn't real or isn't there, or it's a matter of perspective. And it's like, we take it personally, like we failed. You failed against a giant.
You haven't.
corporation.
So here's one that helps. As you know, when you're walking around town or driving around the city or where it Leeds or wherever you are, you'll see billboards. You know, it's all over the place in the billboards. But most of the billboards aren't selling anything directly, but they're just there all the time. They're just there. And the reason why organisations do that is because they want you just to get used to seeing it, not necessarily taking everything in. And so our brains work on what we see and hear the most of. And then all of a sudden we think it's also maybe 6 months down the line, something pops into their head about a problem they've got. And the brain will go, well, how can I solve the problem? And pops up a picture of the poster they saw. And they think it's them. That's why they spend millions, if not billions of pounds over the years on billboards and advertising, simply just to be in your awareness without you realizing they're in your awareness. And then all of a sudden that picture pops up. So we kind of, if we have that for marketing around debt and money and purchasing things, and or the stories we hear about why somebody else is doing so well, I wish I was doing that, then people get taken over. So most of the times, our brains are not working for us. They could be working against us. We don't even realize it.
And like you say, the society, like parts of the society and big parts of the society are sort of designed and engineered to actively be hostile to us in a way. Like to be hostile in terms of like, so think of a supermarket, the kind of induce a buying state for you. And it's kind of, if you ask someone, this is what we're going to do to you before they went in, they'd kind of be like, no. But then you just go in and it's kind of accepted. But so it's not your fault if you go into the supermarket and you come out with some random stuff that you're like, why did I buy this? It's like, because it's designed that way. But like, that's what the experience is supposed to do. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's not a trick.
No, it's doing its job. It's doing its job. And it's using your psychology against you most of the time. You know? And this is where things like, when people start talking about meditation and those kind of practices, which is good to see that's getting much more and more popular, ultimately what meditation is teaching you, there's lots of different types of meditation. It's a very general statement for a number of things, but what it's helping you is develop some brain cells, particularly the front part of your brain, which are actually the bit where our conscious awareness all comes together. And it's saying, right, let me grab hold of what's coming at me rather than be taken over by it. So, and when people are meditating, they're using a lot of energy because their brain's working really, really hard. And so it's helping you take control of the thoughts coming at you rather than you being overtaken by the thoughts, thinking that the thoughts are in charge. That's why it's such a powerful tool to do, meditation. It literally is like somebody does weight training. You're building muscle as your weight training, or certainly keeping it as it is, keeping it at least as it is, if not going to make it stronger. And when you do the meditation exercises, you are literally growing cells in the front, particularly in the front part of your brain, and the network, like the motorways that go to all the other parts of your brain, you're making them stronger for you to have better control of, rather than be taken over by the thoughts coming at you. So it actually makes physical changes to your brain. Think of it like that, putting down your own motorway network, controlling, impulsive thoughts, than letting being taken over by the impulse. And so if we could have financial education in schools, and also how our brain works, and also taught lessons on how compassion for people and respect for people, we all did that. Those are things I'd like to see changed. And I think we probably have a lot less troubles in our world.
That's a really good outpoint, so I should leave that there. I'll do a quick bit, is there anything that you want to cover, anything that you want to say that we've not touched on? Should we do a little bit on Leeds?
If you would like to. Yeah, you can ask me some questions on Leeds.
You could have been anywhere.
It could have been anywhere, yeah.
You could literally you could do this job anywhere in the world, and you could probably do it internationally. I suppose this, when I was starting out, I still love this, I use it a lot, but so it's this lady who, she teaches English to business professionals who already have a level of English, but they don't get to practice. Okay. And they want their English to be at, that high level, that they can be conversational and colloquial and sort of. So she'll just chat with these high-powered business people around the world and just speak in English so that they get practice. Yeah. She works from home. Yeah. Whatever hours she wants. I mean, brilliant.
Brilliant. I love it.
You're helping people all over the world. Well done you.
Yeah, you're good for her. Yeah, I love it.
But you could, surely London would be a great place to do this. A massive market. You can make a huge dent and nearer to the media and all of this kind of stuff. So why do you stick to Leeds?
So I stick to Leeds. Leeds is my home. Yeah. And I think that sounds a bit obvious, but really, yes, I could probably live anywhere else, but I'd rather live in Leeds. And the organisations I serve are national, to be fair. It's right across the country. But I think being there's something about Leeds. So I was growing up when Leeds United was the football team of Britain, possibly of Europe at the time. And I was very proud of that we were like the top. We were a hard team, but we're also very graceful as well. Some of the skills that the players had, but we were a cut above just about every other team in Britain. And I don't really want to respect Liverpool because they're a great team at that time as well. And so I had a lot of pride in that growing up. And I also found that Leeds was a city that had to stand up for itself. And really interestingly, there's an article in the Times last year was talking about the fact the city of Leeds is one of those cities that has done it on its own. And because it's done it on its own, governments think, Leeds is all right, we don't need to put too much investment to Leeds. It's kind of done it its own. It's done it well on its own. Well, the reality is that Leeds has lost over £1 billion from government by 2020 from the council. Yet the council kept a great level of services going for people who are particularly difficult in the money side. I can't speak about all the other side, but certainly the money side.
And the ethos, fact that anything's going on, that they pay for is kind of amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And the ethos. So it kind of corroborated that in my mind. And I thought, well, because now I can work remotely if I need to. I do like to work face to face with organisations where we can, not always, but where they can, I will. And some organisations say, look, the best way for us to work is face to face. I don't think it's going to work if we don't do face to face. And I'll be very honest about that with them. So it's for me, I'm very proud of that. And, coming from a family who are very much self-starters as well, particularly driven by my mother, who was bringing up 4 kids, that still was out there, getting things going for us, getting things going for the family. I've just kept that with me. you know. So Leeds has always been my home, but I do like travelling if I get a chance to. So yeah, I'm very proud of Leeds, what Leeds has done and what Leeds has become. Because I remember when I was at the charity, we were asked to speak to an adjudicator for voting for which is the best council in the country. And we've been asked to speak to them as well. And there was a CEO from another city, I think it was from Glasgow at the time, and had a chat with us and some other organisations. And ultimately, when they did their assessment of what was going on in Leeds won the best council in the country. And it's because of its way it's brought communities together, and it's tried its hardest to keep communities together in the most difficult times. So I'm very proud of that and feel that I want to keep that. So I'm very, very much Leeds for that. Yeah.
Do I want to say that? Yeah, I do want to say this. I think it's quite a cohesive place. Like, it's, the cities in the country much more fragmented, and even though there are like areas of the city that have some of the greatest deprivation in the country, it's that we're all Leeds, aren't we, sort of thing. And I know it's trite, and it's kind of like, but also it's kind of true.
Yeah, it is. It is. And when you look at the facts, I know that the West Yorkshire Mayor is now trying to get the transit system in place, but why hasn't Leeds been given that? There's something's not right about that. Why it's just not right? And people say, "Oh, Leeds grumble and whatever." You look at Manchester, the amount of investment Manchester's received and supported. I understand from government as well. Great city, because I studied at Salford University, so I loved Manchester. I loved it at the time. It's a great place, and don't begrudge anything. But yet we seem to be the city is the poor relation when it comes to supporting the city from outside of Leeds. Government, as I said, the Times report, Leeds is one that stood up for itself, really, and done it itself. So I thought certain types of governments would normally support that, but they didn't, even though it go against their ethos. So, but find that very, very odd. So I'm very proud of that. And it's also a beautiful place to live as well. We could do better transport, yes, but it's a lovely city.
And the countryside's
it's the best.
Away.
Absolutely. So it's great. It's great. So it's great. Yeah, I'm very proud of it.
I think, I don't know if it's still true, but definitely at one time we had more green spaces than any other city in Europe.
That's what I remember, and then I've got people from Sheffield telling us otherwise, but Sheffield's smaller. Lovely city, but smaller. So I'm very, very proud of that. We've got beautiful countryside, and it's just lovely to be out in there as well and enjoy it. So yes, very, very proud of the city.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? I will put links in the show notes and everything as well.
Okay. You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah. Saleem Shafi on LinkedIn. I have my website, moneybeam.uk, which it's going to be redone, by the way, so bear that with me. There's also Moneybeam business page as well on LinkedIn, and First Aid Money on Instagram, which I'm updating shortly. Yeah. Just get going.
Excellent. So I'm going to stop us there.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you again to Saleem for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all of my guests. And thank you to you, Leeds, for being my subject for this show. You can find out more about Saleem's work at moneybeam.co.uk or follow him on LinkedIn. Links will be in the show notes as usual. 5 episodes left to go. Who will they be? What will they say? Well, I know who we're listening to next time. Stay tuned to the socials to see when the next episode is out. Also, follow me on Blue Sky. It's completely dead on there. I'll put the link in the show notes, but you can find me at workinghourspod.bsky.social. So just a little bit of background before I do anything else. So I got the sign off for this interview just before the start of May, and it's been impossible to motivate myself to sit down for the hours of unpaid editing and admin that I need to do to create this episode. There's nothing fun about hours of unpaid work, especially when you have over 1,000 listeners in 1 month, then all of a sudden no one is bloody listening again. Thanks for destroying the internet again, Silicon Valley, you bastards. I don't want to be doing something nobody values. Yes, it gives me the incredible opportunity to speak to so many interesting people in my own city, but it's hours of work that isn't fun, that doesn't pay, and that no one listens to, and nobody's actively interested in. I love doing the interviews. I like being able to big people up and to big the city up. I even enjoy the editing sometimes. It's the failure, the doing all this for no reason feeling that eats away at me and creates the resentment, and I need to spare myself from it. Anyway, if you're a human being hearing this, I have now posted the prices for paid episodes of Working Hours on the website. Link is in the show notes as normal. There will be discounts for small leads charities, unemployed people, for unfeatured or underrepresented roles, and for trade union members. I'll post those details onto the website soon. Also, if you haven't done so already, please sign up to the Working Hours newsletter. You can do that from my website, www.western-studios.com. And that's the best place to keep up to date on what's actually happening with the show going forward. I know it's occasional and it's not regular, and I wanted to do it regularly, but when there's no point to it, it's hard to do these things. So, but I will, when there's news, I'll put it in there. That's what I'll try to do. Don't forget, there's nothing to stop you from supporting this project and this show financially right now. Either go to the Patreon, patreon.com/workinghourspod, where you can get memberships from £6 a month. And for every £300 raised on Patreon, a new episode of Working Hours can be made. That's basically paid for the work to be done so that someone can have an episode, so they don't have to pay for it. Don't want to commit to a regular contribution? Then give a one-off gift of whatever amount you can spare via Ko-fi. There's a £3 minimum donation on that site, and there's not many places in Leeds where you'd get a coffee for less than £3. Anyway, once £300 has been raised on that platform, I can make a new Working Hours episode for you. Go to ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/working hours. Both links are in the show notes. When I started this, I wanted it to be cheap so everyone could pay. I was thinking, Marks and Spencer's Penny Bazaar, let the entry level be low so people can get involved and they can partake and they can contribute and they're not excluded because it's prohibitively expensive. That was the idea. So do you remember when I talked about the Patreon being a pound a month? That was my ask. Charging my guests money for their episodes of Working Hours is being done to create a sense of ownership for my guests and to give them a greater sense of value for their episodes. Why? Because free is worthless, as I have demonstrated. This, hopefully, will incentivize guests to share their episodes. After all, they've paid for it now. They want to get their money's worth, ideally. Okay, in other podcast news, I did my first teaching gig down at Swarthmore Education Centre last month with my first introduction to podcasting workshop. Thanks to those that came along, I'm hoping for a full class for the next one and also to have a tighter format and much better delivery from me than last time. It went well last time, but it was all very loosey-goosey. Workshop attendance is limited to 8, and we need at least 3 people to run it. So don't assume that it will either A, run, or B, sell out, not without you buying any tickets for it. This isn't radio. You're likely the only person on earth listening to this right now. It's £25 for the workshop, and it's on Saturday, 11th of July at 10:30 at Swarthmore Education Centre. Tickets are available from Eventbrite now. Link will be in the show notes. If you'd like to contact me about being one of the final free guests on this show, about paying for an episode, about what happened in this episode, or about anything Working Hours related, you can email me about this show at the show's email address, workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you would like to contact me to help you with your podcast production, to provide podcast training, or to help you with equipment or studio setup, then you can email my podcast production business, Western Studios Leeds Limited, via makemypodcast@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it is impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice, but reduce your impact. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and do be kind to each other, Leeds. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who you think could get some benefit from it. Thanks. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited, created and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Remember, Western Studios Leeds Limited when you're ready to start making your content in West Yorkshire. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook, facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds, and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Bookmark western-studios.com so you can see the latest prices and use my contact page to drop me a message about your own podcast project or working hours at any time from anywhere. Maybe you want or need a podcast host, co-host or narrator for your podcast project. Maybe you just need another voice for one or more episodes of your show. Podcasts are so much more than gossip, book promotions, and marketing for online courses. Podcasts and other audio content get your online brand out there. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to have an audiobook or video course? Want to share your learning, knowledge, and expertise in your field? Want to learn, teach, or raise awareness of something general or particular? Want to improve internal comms with messages your staff might actually engage with? Or do you just want to brighten up the world with some entertaining content? Then make a podcast. If you're making your podcast within West Yorkshire, then think about making it with western-studios.com. Whatever your podcast questions or needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.